This big demon has really gone crazy. He threw out a legendary weapon. It can take a general's head from 1,000 miles away. And the moment it strikes the ground in just an instant, it unleashes countless red spear dances within 100 feet. These soldiers are cut down like weeds. In 2.5 seconds, the bodies piled up at his feet. Even such an impressive demon protagonist, he still faced the human hero ranked 7th. He not only possesses the Eye of Omniscience, but even summoned a disaster-class swarm of bugs. Just as the protagonist was still processing this, he was directly pinned against the stone by the bugs. Little did he know, within less than 2.5 seconds of the toxin entering his body, he completely lost consciousness. It turned out just moments ago, the fairy leader celebrated the protagonist for defeating the second wave of humans. But just a second later, the leader became worried because the third wave of troops was advancing relentlessly. This time, the clan leader wants to mobilize both sides' forces to end the war in one go. After discussing the battle plan with the clan leader, he hurried back to the goblin village. As night fell, he saw that there were nearly 2,000 soldiers in the human base. Meanwhile, the main character's side, including his clan and fairy allies, only had about 650 people. A blind assault would surely result in heavy casualties. First, the main character summoned a large number of undead skeletons. Next, the team will attack the soldiers on both sides. Meanwhile, I will lead the skeletons to strike at their core. Then in the next second, a horde of undead skeletons charged out of the woods, engaging the human army in a fierce battle. This fight lasted all night. But unexpectedly, just as dawn broke, the undead skeletons began to disintegrate in the sunlight. Seeing this, the soldiers thought they could mount a counterattack. But just in the next second, the skeleton, which should have vanished, revived again. It turns out the protagonist had placed his blood clones inside each skeleton. Then they transformed into slime, enveloping the skeletons, and their battle power increased significantly. After the protagonist cut down a group of soldiers here, he ordered his skeleton army to support the nearby allies. Next, he planned to take out these soldiers alone, so he gathered a large amount of blood and water in his hands. What is that? It absorbed water and blood from the ground. The main character thought it would end like this. Unexpectedly, a human approached. However, the main character recognized him at a glance. He was Filippo, one of the 8 heroes. What surprised him even more was that Filippo revealed his Eye of 10,000 forms the moment he opened his eyes. He showed his Eye of 10,000 forms directly. He was the human arranged to kill the protagonist here. He then took out a few bottles of immortal poison. After being thrown onto the dead soldiers, these soldiers actually stood up alive again. In other words, the enemy's curse is actually a type of parasitic biological weapon. The male lead thought there was nothing to fear, but unexpectedly, Filippo used a curse switching technique next. Soldiers exploded one after another, and then became a true undead army. Alright, playtime is over. This is my undead bug army. I never expected that my undead bug army would be wiped out. Filippo, however, was even more excited, because this was just his lowest level toy. However, it turns out this was Filippo's true strength. This disaster level bug was his most trusted pet. What is this? Just when the protagonist was caught in the middle, the toxins from the bug seeped in, causing the protagonist to lose consciousness immediately. Watching the protagonist's seemingly doomed situation, Filippo ordered the bugs to return to their work. Then, in the next second, Filippo never expected that the protagonist could fully resurrect, but he remained calm. Even though his bugs had already gone far, he had to use one of his trump cards, but the protagonist didn't give him a chance and attacked directly, and swung an axe at Filippo's head. But the result surprised the protagonist. Filippo hasn't used his first ability yet. He forced him to use his second trump card. So next, Filippo directly stabbed these undead insects. After absorbing the energy, he transformed into a large humanoid insect. However, the protagonist thought about how to eat him. After several attacks, he sent his opponent into the air. Now Filippo arrogantly thought, let's see how you fight me. But the next step, exoskeleton suit. Wing generation. Just as Filippo was still in shock, the male lead jumped up instantly. This cleared out the enemies nearby. Filippo noticed this time he was quite keen on fighting, but then he wanted to call for a truce. But the male lead certainly didn't plan to let him escape. And the next second, Filippo surprisingly emerged from the body of the giant bug. He sprinted bare-assed into the depths of the forest. Seeing this, the male lead was about to chase after. Unexpectedly, the hollow bug still managed to move, though the male lead took it down with one axe. But the other side had already vanished. At that moment, Goblin rushed over. He quickly embraced the male lead. He was very concerned about the male lead's condition, so the male lead asked about the situation on the other side. Next, the protagonist sent his stealth clone to the deep forest where the human army's headquarters was. It turned out this place was the Empire's command center. The clone quietly approached the next emperor. The protagonist expressed his desire to stop fighting. He handed over the precious fairy potion they wanted most. This potion was the reason the human army attacked the important fairy clan. The protagonist knew it would have been easy to kill the next emperor then, but the Empire would surely retaliate to protect its honor and wipe out the fairies. The Goblin clan, too, will face its own doom. This is not the outcome the protagonist wants to see. After all, the clan's combat strength is still developing. We need to understand the aftermath of this battle. Many allies and comrades were seriously injured. The death toll exceeded 30. He watched his fallen comrades' final journey in flames. Although they were all saddened by this outcome, it sparked everyone's desire to strengthen their abilities. Because the protagonist knows that only then we can fully attack human territory.